we're going to get started. I don't think this lady right here to my left is a stranger to anyone. Kelly Sipe is back. She's, as you know, our regular Drums Alive teacher, and she also has a wealth of knowledge on health and wellness, and she's here today to talk about living with chronic illness and pain. And just a reminder, as always, we have Walpole Media here, so I'm hopeful this isn't too loud, but we do need it so you can hear over the cable. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand, and Kelly will either bring the microphone over or repeat your question. Thanks. Okay, thanks, Kelly. Here you go.
Thank you. Okay, so again, I don't like the sound of my voice, so I'm going to hold this down here and try to get it as not loud as possible. So again, my name is Kelly, and I do know most of you, but if you're new to me, I do teach the Drums Alive class here on Tuesdays at 1. It's a cardio drumming class, and it's a good way to connect your mind and body. And those that have taken the class with me, you know how it can be a lot of fun, but it can also get a lot of confusing. Yeah, so we work through it all, and we have a good time with it. So if you haven't joined us, we'd love to have you come to one of our... Yes, please. Yep.
Sorry, thank you so
Just
much.
one, or do you need another one?
Just one's fine.
I would love to have you come and join us. So today we're here to talk about living with chronic illness and chronic pain. That's me. This is my walker. I have end-stage renal disease, and it's kidney failure. And with the kidney failure, there's been lots of complications that have come along with it. And so I'm here, and it's been 25 years, just about 24 years of living with this. And so I've reluctantly become a good expert at living with a chronic illness and what it means. But what I should say from the beginning is, even if we all had the same exact chronic illness or pain, we would receive it differently. We would behave differently. We have our own experiences. Along with that, somebody may have an illness that's just starting. Somebody could have it for 10 years, or like me, for 25 years, and your experiences change how you are. So there's different stages of an illness. There's different types of illness. So let's keep that in mind as we go forward. But we will talk a little bit about this. The handout is something that'll be great for you to take with you. You can also take notes on this today. A lot of what you have to do with chronic illness is deal with doctors, usually more than one, and multiple times. So this is a good reference for you to keep with you on when you're meeting new doctors, when you're seeing the same doctors over and over again, and things that you can discuss and why you should discuss a lot of these things with them. But we'll get into this later, but you could grab it. You can put notes on the back if you want, and we will just jump right in. I heard something. Oh, that's not me. That's her. Okay. So chronic disease versus chronic illness. Medically speaking, the chronic disease are very different. Doctors and medical professionals will call it a chronic disease. We all living with it typically call it chronic illnesses. So the disease is a biomedical disease. It includes diabetes, asthma, depression. There's very specific things that are listed for chronic disease. Chronic illness, think about things that affect your day-to-day life. And for today's purposes, we're going to talk about that, whether it's asthma, whether it's just allergies, pain, anything that affects your day-to-day life is what we're going to talk about. And as we go through it, you're going to realize that having a chronic disease, from the medical standpoint, leads to chronic illnesses, which really affect your day-to-day life. So we're going to focus a little bit more on that part. So the chronic disease, conditions that last 1 year or more. Heart disease, cancer, diabetes. These are also the most relevant or the most frequent diseases, but they cost the most medically in the country, and it costs the most medically all over. But something about these, if you look at it, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. Let's look at cancer in specifically. And again, we talk about something that lasts for more than 1 year. Typically, when you have a cancer, you might have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you, like say, for example, breast cancer. You've had breast cancer, you were treated, you ended the breast cancer, you no longer have it, you're in remission. But that whole thing could have taken 2 or 3 years as you've gone through all of the treatments for that. And then when you're in remission, you still have 5 years of you being managed to make sure that it doesn't come back. So now you're looking at maybe 7 years of an illness that you were really only being chronically managed for maybe 2 years. And then it could come back. So even though there's a beginning, middle, and end of that illness, it still goes into the chronic illness category. We'll continue with these and see some of these other differences. So chronic illnesses, 80% of seniors have one. How many have any type of chronic illness that you would think at home now? Not quite, we're laughing. So 80% have one, 68% have 2 or more, over 50% have 3 or more. Once you have one, you're very likely to have a second one. And once you have 2, you're very likely to have a third and fourth. So I always think of it as there's something else coming at you. Once your body is weakened by the first one, your body is so weak, something else gets you. Then it's weakened again, and then the third thing gets you. But it can be transitory. So you could have breast cancer, and you're living and dealing with the breast cancer. Well, the medications cause you to have pneumonia. The pneumonia went on to cause you to have COPD, and it just keeps going. So a lot of these things are not isolated. There was that old song, the foot bones connected to your knee bone, that song. Well, that's true. Everything we do is not in isolation. It's rare that you have something that's in isolation. The only thing I can think of, you have a toothache, they pull the toothache is gone. That's pretty much the only thing I can think of that is in isolation, and it doesn't dramatically affect everything else around you. But typically, you have one illness, one weakness, it opens you up for other ones to come in after that. Here are some of the big chronic ones. Hypertension, high cholesterol, arthritis, ischemic heart disease, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, heart failure, depression, Alzheimer's and dementia, and coronary obstruction. So these are 10 chronic conditions. And these are not necessarily all diseases. A blockage isn't necessarily a disease, but it's a chronic condition. Now, I would add to that if we start looking at our skeletal bodies, knee replacement, hip replacement, back injuries, back pains, these types of things that affect your day-to-day life are something that continues and they're ongoing. These are just basic chronic conditions for 65 and older. Here are some of the 12 major. Now, again, if we look at medical being disease, chronic disease, versus chronic illnesses or chronic conditions, here's your major ones. Heart disease, stroke, lung cancer, colorectal cancer, depression, type 2 diabetes, arthritis, osteoporosis, asthma, pulmonary COPD, chronic kidney disease, oral disease. So there's that link between your oral health and heart health. So that's another link that's come through. But all of these, it may not be the acute illness or the acute injury that causes you the problem. It's all the side effects that come with it. And sometimes, what do they say? The cure is worse than the disease. Well, it can very well happen. As you're being treated for something, it causes a side effect of something. And then that side effect causes another side effect. All of a sudden, you turn around, you got 4 illnesses that you're trying to manage because of one injury or one illness or one acute illness. So these things are just the biggest ones that have day-to-day issues for us. Now we're dealing with the stresses of it. Long-term illness. I want to make a caveat here for not only being you living with a chronic illness, but you caring for somebody with a chronic illness. There's a huge study that shows that caregivers often get sick and die earlier than the person that they're caring for because of the stress that's related to caring for someone else. And it really can be overwhelming, and it does tend to fall on women more than men. It's just the nature of the beast. But that's changing in the younger generations, that certainly has changed. But at the same time, somebody who is a caregiver for another person eventually starts getting their own illnesses and no one is there to care for them. That's where the breakdown is. And especially with spouses, husband, wife, parent, child. So my grandma passed away, she was 92. My mom was 72. My mom is still alive, but she was starting to get sick, caring for my 92-year-old grandma. Well, 72 is not young. She starts getting sick, it starts to spin out a little bit. So we had to back her off and go in and care for her. So it happens a lot between the husband, wife, parent, child, that relationship where the caregiver sometimes gets sick as well. So when we think about illnesses and the stresses of it, it's not just stress that you yourself are having as the person living with it, but as the caregiver who's stressing over it. When I was very sick, now I got very, very sick. When I was in the hospital, my daughter was 8 months old when I got sick. In the beginning, she was top of mind for me. Where is she? Who's with her? Who's taking care of her? She was 8 months old. 4 weeks into it, I barely remembered that I had a child. I was so focused on having to heal myself that I stopped caring about where she was. I knew I had a child, but it was no longer top of mind. I was so sick at that point that I needed to focus on me. If other people were not there to pick up that piece, I'm not sure what would have happened. So when you're sick, top of mind becomes a big issue. If you're sick and you're caring for another, what happens then, right? So if you're the caregiver, you're caring for your spouse or parent, you start to go down. Who's going to pick up the pieces for caring for your spouse or parent while you are also getting sick? So this becomes this circular type of illness. Lots of stress, physical effects of illness. I'm sure we've all dealt with physical effects of illness. We were just talking about somebody, they were talking about having food poisoning. I know you don't laugh about food poisoning, but I'm going to have to tell you this story. My daughter's first communion, we had 45 people at a banquet hall. 39 got food poisoning. People who were traveling by planes and by cars were going home with food poisoning. I did not get sick. I didn't eat the food. I was so busy with everything that I didn't eat the food. Everybody else got sick. So the stress of that that's the physical effects of one type of illness, right? You could have lots of different physical effects, but they call it psychosomatic as well. You could think you're going to get sick and you're all of a sudden sick. So there's definitely a physical component to your medical side. Dealing with the different treatments. Oh, that should be up. Dealing with different treatments. Chronic illnesses have their own treatments and they have lots of them. This becomes very difficult to manage the treatments, especially if you're doing an aggressive treatment, say for cancer. You've got radiation, you have chemo, you have surgeries, all of these things layered on. The side effects of any one of those could sideline you. You start multiplying those up, you really start to get devastated by the treatments of it. Not only is it the physical treatments of it, but it's also the technical side, getting to all of these different places. How are you going to get there? Is it close? Is it far? Do I need a bus? Do I need, how am I going to manage all of this? So this becomes a difficult and stressful on its own, is just trying to manage the treatments. Clear communication with your doctors. That's what this form is for. As like it or not, we are in a world of primary care and specialists, and they do not talk to one another. If you've ever had specialists, if you were lucky to have a specialist that your primary care recommended that they know, they may talk to each other. But I live in Somerset. My kidney doctor is at Beth Israel. My endocrinologist is at Mass General. No one is talking to anybody. So the patient's family needs to be the one that bridges that gap, because it's not like it used to be where your primary was also your specialist. They worked you through, got you through all of it. Now we have specialists that really specialize in one thing. I go to a kidney doctor, she works on my kidney. I have to go to an endocrinologist for my thyroid and parathyroid. They don't talk to each other. So the kidney, I need to take prednisone for my transplant. The prednisone is what killed my parathyroid. They weren't talking to each other, so there was no communication about trying to manage that prednisone dose to bring it down to save the thyroid. They didn't talk to each other. Again, I was a newbie at that point of being sick. I did not think that they did not communicate. I know better now. So you need to make sure that you bridge that gap between your primary, your specialist, everybody's on board with the same things that are going on with you physically. Things get missed. Your doctors spend 10 minutes with you, 15 minutes maybe, if you're lucky. They are not there. They're not reading your Bible that you walk in with all of your medical history. They don't have it. Unless you've been with this doctor for a long time, they're not aware of your history. You need to help them understand what's going on to make sure that they are very clear on how they treat you. And if you have questions, call your primary, call the person that's your key specialist. My key specialist is my nephrologist, my kidney doctor. Any questions I have, I direct to my kidney doctor. Anytime I go somewhere, I'm like, look, if you don't believe me, you don't understand, call this person. I give them the heads up. Look, these people are calling you. I don't know what's going on. We need to figure it out. Find that specialist that's going to help with you. That's going to be your key point. Sometimes it's your primary. You see them a lot. You may have been with your primary for a long time. That's a person that you might want to use as a resource for you. This is a bad one. Emotional balance with negative feelings. Holy smokes. That's a big one, right? So you go ebb and flow. So you first diagnosed with something, you can handle it. 3 weeks later, you're like, I'm sick of this. I don't want to deal with this anymore. You become very negative. Long haulers, people who, again, we've talked about chronic illness 1 year or more. I've been 25 years with this. Long haulers have this for life. Somebody who has diabetes, managing diabetes 3 times a day, 4 times a day, it's a hard balance, right? There are times you're just so sick of it. If I have to prick my finger one more time, you're not going to do it. These long haulers, they self-sabotage. And it's something that you just have to kind of deal with those negative feelings and say, okay, regroup. Let's figure out how we're going to do this. Sometimes it's maybe not pricking 4 days. Maybe go twice if you've managed your diabetes well enough, you're starting to feel better. Maybe go to that DEXA scan if you can. That's on the arm. Finding different solutions, because the worst thing you can do is start ignoring your illnesses, whatever they may be. I take 24 pills a day. I take 24 pills a day. I have to tell you, I get to those last 5 at night, I'm like, I'm done. Absolutely done. So my doctor and I made a deal. I take calcium pills because my kidney doesn't produce calcium. I take 6 different calcium pills. So if I have to have a cheat day, I cheat on my calcium pills because I'm sick of it. I don't want to take them. She's like, just take them twice a week then. At least get them in you. But she allows me that little gap to just say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm sick of it. I'm not going back. And then, of course, 3 months later, my calcium is really bad. She's like, go back. Every day, you're going back. But you need to have those deals. You need to have ways to get out of those negative feelings, whatever they may be. And then positive self-image, huge problem, huge. Medications can be devastating to what you look like, to how you feel. Beyond that, you could lose weight, you could gain weight, you could lose mobility, you could gain hypermobility. There's lots of different things that can happen. And if your self-image is tied up in that, that's a big deal. Now, luckily, I was never pretty vain. I was never vain, never wore makeup. So when I got sick, no makeup, that's okay, I'm okay with that. But it becomes an issue. You become this image of what you have, and that changes, right? You have, we call it before sickness, after sickness, right? So before I got sick, I was this is where I am now, and it's nowhere where I thought it was gonna be. So you have these images, you have to adjust to what that feels like, what that looks like. Not only for you, but maybe for your spouse and your child. Before I got sick, I was a lifeguard, a skier, basketball player. This is what, I was captain of my basketball and softball team in high school, skied, and was a lifeguard every summer from 14 to 19. I got sick, wound up chairbound for about a year, bedridden for almost 2. That was not my life. That was not what I thought I was going to be for my daughter. So as I raised my daughter, I'm not teaching her how to play basketball. I'm not out there playing with her, playing softball, swimming. Luckily, we had other people in the family, but of course, she chose soccer. Who plays soccer? I never even knew what that was, but she chose soccer. I couldn't help her. I didn't understand it. But we do skiing together. And this is me skiing, at the beginning. That was me skiing about 4 years ago. I get into a bi-ski. I sit on the ground. The first time I went down the hill, sitting on there, I did a dance when I got to the bottom. I was so happy that I got down that ski. The exhilaration of going back to doing something that I thought I would never do again was huge, huge. We had so much fun. I had fun with my instructors, my husband. We had such a ball. I can't even tell you. Probably one of the best days that I had had. COVID hit and I haven't been skiing since, but finding ways to do things that you love to do is also a big part of it. Let's just keep going. I don't want to talk too long. I could talk for hours. All right, additional demands. This is something that I suggest everybody do. Your first diagnosis, again, we have different stages of our diagnosis. The first time you're diagnosed, try to understand what's going on. Ask the questions, talk to the doctors, find out what's going on. When I first got sick, walked in the hospital in pain, but healthy, at least I thought I was healthy. 2 days later, doctor comes in and says, you lost your kidneys, you have to go on dialysis, you need to figure it out. Like, okay. And they said, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, whatever, tell me, I heard of dialysis. I knew what kidney failure was. No concept at all what that actually meant. In my mind, and my husband, we were both sitting there, we thought we'd be on dialysis and I would just continue. I'd go to dialysis 3 hours a day, 3 days a week. My life would be just as normal as it was. So far off, I can't even begin to tell you. No understanding of what that meant. So first thing, understand your condition. Become the expert in that condition. Know about your treatments and therapies. Things change. Things change frequently. Talking to your specialist, whatever that illness may be, to find out what's going on. I had fallen and had broken both my arms, and I was in Fall River. The doctor that I had there, the orthopedic, he was an older gentleman. He wrapped my arms, but because I was immunocompromised from medication, I wasn't healing. 9 weeks out, we had to re-break my bones and recast them. He didn't want to do surgery because he was afraid of what that would do. I come up to Boston, I had 9 weeks and I'm right back at the beginning again. Come up to Boston, 6 days later, I'm in surgery. I have 2 surgeries done, newer technique, younger doctor, newer procedures. So be aware of what's going on. He was very aggressive, but it worked. And I remember going into surgery and I wrote yes on this arm, no on this arm, because they both were broken. This one was getting the pins put in, this one was not. So big no, do not touch was written on my arm. But he did it and he did the surgery. And if it happens again, we'll probably have to fuse those bones because there's nothing left to heal. They would just shatter. But there was a big pin put in it and it was a whole different procedure. So be up on what is changing in the field, in that illness that you have. Maintain the confidence in your doctors, especially for recovery. Again, I was not confident with my doctor down in Fall River when 9 weeks later we have to re-break my arms because they didn't set right. Confidence is you need to know that they're good. Now, confidence doesn't mean well-liked. I have confidence in my kidney surgeon who is so arrogant and so mean, but I have confidence that he's going to do well. You could have a primary, one of my primaries way back when, best social man, courteous, talks to me every time I'd go in, missed the whole diagnosis to begin with. So being well-liked does not instill confidence. You can like somebody and still be very shy of them medically. Make sure they know what they're talking about. It's not enough to like them. You have to trust that they know what they're doing. Control your symptoms, how to control them. Diabetes is a big one. How can you control your diabetes, your insulin? Type 1 versus type 2, now type 3, 1.5. There's all different things that are going on now. How do you control your symptoms? When your symptoms are out of control, what do you do? How do you recognize that? So I have my taste and my tongue. When my kidney function is off, I taste iron. I taste metal in my tongue. And I taste it immediately. I call the doctor. I'm like, yep, got to do something. Fix the numbers. Let's go blood work. Do what we have. You recognize things that are happening. You are your best expert. You know when you wake up in the morning if something is wrong, right? You know, that's not right. That shouldn't be sticking out over here. You know you need to go somewhere and do it. You also know I have a fever. Maybe the fever is only 100, but my normal temperature is 96.1. So when I have a fever of 100, I'm already pretty high. I know when you know when you feel lousy. Whether you want to admit it to yourself or not, you know when things are not right. Make sure you go on it. Figure it out. Talk to the doctor. Don't take no for the answer. Go through and figure it out. Be that squeaky wheel that gets heard with those little symptoms that you know is not right, and we'll make sure you get through it. So right here, social relationships and avoiding isolation. Big, big, big deal. Chronic illnesses versus acute illnesses. And I go back to cancer. A friend of mine has Hodgkin's lymphoma. Everybody rallied, right? She went through treatments and she's recovered, but she's probably 18 months. She had 2 kids, husband, taking care of work. Everyone rallied. Food deliveries, meal deliveries, taking care of the kids, moving them back and forth. I have kidney disease for 25 years. I'm not getting food deliveries. They don't happen. They don't stay. Your social network drops. They're there initially. They're there to help when you're in the acute side of it. But if you're a long hauler, they're not going to stay. They can't. They have their own lives that they can do. They can help when you need them. They're there, right? I needed a transplant. 14 people showed up to get tested for the transplant. That's amazing. But I also need somebody to pick up my kid to bring him to school. No one was there for that. So making the social connections, making them to the people who really know, and usually it's your close family. You have friends, they're going to be there, and they'll be there when you're at your lowest, but they're not going to be there the day in and day out. Usually it's your family that's there with you. My sister, my second transplant was from my sister, so I've gotten this transplant from her. We are like oil and water. We couldn't be any more different. We fight like cats and dogs, but we would also defend each other like vicious, vicious animals. And that's us. We don't always get along, but I know I can get a kidney from her, but I will not give her my scrunchie or my socks. That's how family is, and family will always show up. Not always. You want to have people that will show up that you can work with. And avoiding the isolation. We went through COVID, and I have to tell you, COVID was not a huge revelation for me. That's my life. I live isolated. I live on Zoom. I don't go out. I don't go shopping. I don't go to restaurants. I don't socialize. I don't go to bars. COVID was just another day for me. It did not change my lifestyle at all. Other people completely lost it because of what they needed to do, how they needed to change their lifestyle. So isolation is a big one for people who live in chronic illness. Coming to places like this, the COA, this is big. This is a huge connection. Even if you're not participating, you're out, you're talking to people, you're getting dressed, you're leaving the house, and you're coming to meet people. Big deal. Make sure that you continue those patterns even through illness. And then the emotional roller coaster of living with it. Ups and downs, ebbs and flows. Especially if you're a long hauler. Short term, have you heard the story about the frog in the hot boiling water? Yeah. Throw a frog into boiling water, what's it going to do? Jump out. Think of that as trauma. You're dumped into something, into a trauma or an illness when you first get it. Your body is fighting all it can. If you take that same frog, put it in cold water, slowly inch the temperature up. Little bit, little bit, little bit. It doesn't even recognize that the water is changing. It will boil. Same thing with illness. Acute illness, you get dropped in, the next day you're in a car accident, whatever, you're gonna fight. Slow decline, totally different. You don't recognize it, your body doesn't recognize it. It's hard for you to rally and fight that. That's why it comes this emotional ups and down. Even if you're in remission, I'm doing well with my medication, up, 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 tank, hit the ground, in the hospital, 3 weeks. Doing well, doing well, doing well, down. Maybe not in the hospital, maybe I'm at home for 4 days. It goes up and down, up and down. There's really no other way to manage it other than to have things in place to help you when you're at your lowest and take advantage of every single good day you have, whatever that may be. If I'm having I went skiing. I was having a good day. I was happy. Didn't tell you that 4 days after that I was in the hospital for 6 days. So you take advantage and you want to go high, you want to come down, but you don't want the bound down to be so bad that you crash and you wind up in the hospital. You kind of want to have that good medium, take the good days when you can, manage the bad days the best you have, and just keep moving forward. It's really hard with the long haul chronic illnesses. It's really hard. Strategies, denial, denial, denial. Again, they told me I had kidney disease, I had to go on dialysis. I had no idea what that meant. I thought, yep, okay, let's go. No idea. Very often we deny it. Heart disease is one of those. You have heart disease, you need to eat a better diet, you need to stop drinking. Again, slow changes in that temperature, you don't realize it, you don't see what's happening, you don't feel what's happening. So just because you're doing well, eating a poor diet doesn't mean that it's not changing your body. Doesn't mean that you're not making your heart disease worse, your cholesterol, your blood pressure. Just because you haven't hit the wall or you haven't wound up in the hospital does not mean it's not affecting your body. Diabetes. My dad has diabetes, type 2. Don't have sugar. So what does he do? Diet-free, caffeine-free, sugar-free soda. Over and over. I'm like, Dad, the amount of calories and the amount of yuck that's in this diet soda is making you gain weight. And he's like, no, it's not. He's like, I only have 3 a day, 3 sodas a day, Dad. You can't do that. The doctor said I can't have sugar. That was all he heard. That's all he heard. So he'll eat and drink anything sugar-free because it does not have sugar. It does not mean that it's good for him in any way, shape, or form. Gluten-free. Anybody having celiac disease? So celiac disease is a new, I don't want to say new, it's a new phenomenon that we have now. Celiac disease is you're allergic to gluten and you can have different reactions. Well, I have, my mom's friend has celiac disease, fairly new to her, so she can't have basically flour, wheat. So what does she do? A list of all the things that you can have that don't have flour in it, and all of them are high salt, high sugar foods, tostados and cheese. So she has nachos basically day and night because it's gluten-free. I'm like, you're missing the point of what this is. Just because it fits into that little box does not make it good for you. So be aware. Support groups, finding people who know what you're going through. I'm not a big support group person, but I do like to know about my illness and disease. And even though I'm not a support group person, I do support groups. I go in and present, especially when it came to dialysis. I was young. I was 28 when I was on dialysis, 28 with a child, a young 8-month-old. I would go and meet with people who were similar to me, 32-year-old on dialysis, a 19-year-old on dialysis. Find the people who have been where you are. They will help you. They'll show you the cheats. They'll show you how to manage it. But they'll show you that there's life beyond whatever's going on at that moment. Just because I was on dialysis doesn't mean that I can't do things outside of that. And then grieve. Grief is a big one. And people have a hard time with this one. What are you grieving? Well, you're grieving the life that you no longer have. You grieve what I used to be able to do. Right? I used to do that. I could do that. I can't do it anymore. That's grief. And if you've lost a loved one, that's that grief. What you grieve what you've lost. But you also grieve what could have been. What was it that, again, I was a big athlete. I had every intention of raising my daughter the same way I was raised. That I no longer have that. That was no longer an option. So I had to grieve of what I was missing out on, not only for me, but for her. My husband had to grieve. We were newly married. We were married less than a year. Can you imagine being that person who, for sickness and health? Well, I took that right to the edge, didn't I? We were married less than a year, had our daughter, got sick, all in the same time. And, what do? You're the spouse. He had taken family medical leave to be with me when I was at my sickest, but he had to go back to work. I was still in the hospital, and he had to go to work. Somebody had to pay bills. How do you function like that? So he had to not only grieve for what he lost, but grieve for what we were no longer going to be. So grief is a big part of it, and understanding it, embracing it, and moving forward is a big thing. Become your self-manager. A good thing I like to do, and I do this often, is figure out your day-to-day life. What do you do every single day? And what I had to do with my husband, because I've been sick so many times and wound up in the hospital, we actually have a little process of going through. But when I first got sick, bills had to be paid. I took care of all the bills in the house. I paid all the bills. I paid all the mortgages, the payments, the insurance. He had no idea, one, where the checkbook was, two, what the accounts were, how to find them, how to access them, online, in person, whatever. He had no idea. So we had to create a system. I had to teach him how to pay those bills for when I got sick. So now we have a backup plan. Everything is written out, finding it, where it can go, everything is so he can do it. And every once in a while, I'll just hand it over to him and say, do this for 3 months and make sure you know where everything is. Find that day-to-day stuff. When I was little, my daughter was little, had to get her back and forth to school. Who's going to do that if I can't do that? Who's going to bathe her and do her hair every day? So all of these things happen. So what is it in your life, right? Are you cooking for yourself? Are you cooking for someone else? Do you care for yourself? Do you care for your home? What happens if you're gone, it's winter, and your driveway needs shoveled? Who's going to do that if it's you that does that? How do you manage this? So look at your day-to-day, figure out what the backups are for every single thing that you do. And once you figure that out, it's easy to start handing stuff off that you don't like to do. I don't like to shovel. I'm going to have somebody come and do that. I don't want to do the lawn. I'm going to have somebody go over and do that. So once you figure out what it is you do and what it is that keeps your household going, that they depend on you, then it's easier for you to figure out what things you need to fix or at least get backups for. If you're the meal planner, how do you do that if you're not there? If you're in the hospital, if you're sick, is it your spouse? Is it your child? Is it your family? Are you alone? Who pays your electric bills? Who pays the utilities? All of these things are part of being sick and trying to manage being sick. And then your own best medical advocate. I can't tell you this enough. Fight for yourself, fight for your family. If you can't do it, because some people have a hard time talking to authority. I am not that person. But some people struggle to talk to authority, especially experts. So you have doctors, somebody graduated number 1, but somebody graduated dead last. Do you have that doctor that graduated dead last? I have no idea. But you have to make sure that you are the advocate for yourself and what that looks like. You are your best person on you. When you go to the doctor and say, I'm not feeling well, I'm sleeping a lot, and your doctor says, well, everybody sleeps a lot, you're fine. No, that's not how this goes. When you walk in and say, I'm really hurt, my back really hurts. Well, what did you do? I was gardening and, well, that's what you did. Don't do that anymore. Yeah, but it doesn't feel like it's just a gardening back. I heard it that way. No, don't do it. Well, it could be cancer. If you have cancer in your family, this could be something more serious. Don't let them blow you off. Be your best advocate. I cannot tell you that enough. If you have issues with that, call me. I will be your advocate. I have no problem talking to doctors. No problem whatsoever. My grandma, she got sick and she was in hospice at the very end. She wound up in the hospital and she had fallen, she had broken her arm. And my sister and I were on 24-hour care with her, sleeping in overnight. I walk in and a CNA is grabbing my grandma by her broken arm, pulling her up so she can change her. My grandma is screaming. My sister's right here, just about lunging over the bed to get to this CNA. And I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, she needs to change. Can you see her broken arm? Do you hear this woman screaming? Oh, they all scream. That's not how this works. So the fight, the advocacy right there began. We got hospice involved. We got medical care involved. The advocate group from the hospital. You don't know what's there, and you have to fight for your family. I cannot tell you this enough. Fight for yourself, fight for others. And manage your relationships. Again, we talked a little bit about those that will rally around you for that acute illness. Many times, especially when you're in the hospital, and because I was in the hospital so much, people would come visit me. There's a lot of work to be the person being visited in the hospital, right? I'm tired. I'm sore. I'm sick. I don't want to be social. I don't want to be nice to you. I don't want you here. And you have to manage those relationships. If my mother, father, husband, daughter, sister came in, I could tell them, just go. But if my grandma comes in, I can't tell grandma to go. I can't tell my aunt that took a train to come up to see me, I don't want you here. Those relationships suck the life out of you. You need to manage them. Be aware of those that give you life and those that suck the life out. Pick and choose who you want to be around. Just because they're family does not mean you need to see them all the time. Just because they're family does not mean you have to be social, especially if you're sick. You need to draw that barrier. They don't understand. They want to help you. They want to be with you. They want to do what they can for you. You need to be clear. And sometimes it's hard to be clear with Aunt Gertrude, who's trying to bake food for you and then make sure you eat all that food, and you don't want any food at all. So sometimes it's really hard to manage those relationships. Pick and choose what you can do. Get somebody to be the buffer for you. Find somebody who can put Aunt Gertrude over there doing something else, as opposed to sitting on top of you, making sure you're eating. Be aware that sometimes it's a lot of work being social. This goes even beyond those immediate days. When I first got sick, again, people were around, it was good. Now we go out and I see them socially maybe once a year. And when I go to see them once a year, I am physically, emotionally drained. I don't like going to events like with friends. I don't like being in that environment, and I know that it's going to take me days to recover from an event like that. Typically, it's a birthday party, a 50th birthday party, a 30th anniversary party, something like that, where it's social, there's lots of people. It's usually in a bar or a restaurant. I can't handle them. I know how much it's going to knock me down. We just went through a bunch of graduation parties through COVID. Like, I'm not coming. I'm sorry, but I'm not coming to your indoor graduation party when I'm immunocompromised with 40 other people. So you know what happens? They stop asking. So they walk away. They think you're not going to come, we're not even going to bother. So that's crushing. So you have to manage these carefully. Find the ones that you want to see. Make sure you see them. Make sure you socialize, even if it's not at a graduation party. Maybe it's outside having a barbecue in your backyard, and there's only 4 of them at a time. Find the ones that you need to do, but make sure you draw that line between those that are serving you well and those that are causing you a lot more stress. And then your team. Figuring out what your day looks like, figuring out what that team is, finding the advocate. If it's not you, find somebody else who can do it for you. You need to have a team around you. The goal here is to maintain your independence. Does not mean that you have to do everything by yourself. Yeah? Living at home and being alone, independent, is not the same as having to do everything alone, right? There's 2 different things there. Living independently, you can have help. Somebody can cut the lawn. Somebody can, plow the snow. You can have food delivered. They have Grubhub now. You can have anything delivered. So you can have food delivered. You can have your laundry sent out. Being alone, being an independent does not mean you have to do everything. Find what you can do. Find the things that you need help with. Put them together, and then you've created that life there that you need. Build a network. Caregivers, friends, and experts. Social services, great resources. Elder services, great resource. Even if it's not you're not there at this point, knowing what's available to you is a big deal. And it changes often. So understanding what is available, what they can do, should you get sick, so you can call them when it's needed. That's a big deal. Those are your experts, family, friends that will show up. The ones that you call at 2 a.m. say, I need to go to Boston, which is a 60-minute drive, you need to come take me. Or I need to go to Boston, you need to come take my daughter. Those are the people that are in your care team. And then what do you need to do to stay independent? That's where you go through your day-to-day list. And it changes, right? It's changed since my daughter was little. She's 25 years old now. She's not as needy as she was. She's still needy, let me tell you, but she's not as needy as she was. There's still things that I do around the house, but it's much different than it was when she was little. So things change. Make sure you change along with them. Let's see what else we got. Activities of daily living. I'm sure we've all heard of these, right? ADLs. Mobility, feeding, dressing, personal hygiene, continence, and toileting. This is the same list I give my daughter when she wants to move out. If you want to live alone, these are the things you have to do. Because let me tell you, she cooks food, but leaves a disaster after it. I'm like, some kind of fairy comes in and cleans that kitchen every day. So these are the things that you need to do physically for yourself to live independently. Our ADLs. Then you have the IADLs. Oops. These are a little bit more difficult because they require a little bit more cognitive function. Paying your bills, managing finances, transportation. Are you driving? Do you need somebody else to drive for you? Shopping, meal prep, house cleaning, home maintenance, communication, and medication. These get a little bit more difficult, a little bit more cognitive. But again, these are things that you can find solutions for, right? You can find somebody to manage your finance. You can get a bill paying company to come and pay your bills. You can set them up online. Transportation. We have Uber. I don't take Uber. I shouldn't say that. I don't recommend Uber to anybody. That is not in my wheelhouse. But you have medical transportation. The COAs have a van. They bring people back and forth. Shopping and meal prep. I haven't been shopping in years. I make an order and I pick it up at the door. I don't go shopping at all. And it was pre-COVID. I don't do shopping at all. Meal prep. Very little meal prep. I have to tell you, of all the things that hurt my body more than anything is making a meal. I have one of those stools, high stools that I have to sit at when I'm cooking. I don't stand still. Have you noticed I fidget quite a bit? I can't stand still. Cooking on a skillet is not in my wheelhouse anymore. So meal prep is not something I do. I am a big cereal fan. I eat cereal and oatmeal every day, often. When nobody's around, that's my dinner. But that's a big deal. How are you going to prep it? Now we have Meals on Wheels. We have, like I said, all these different meal services that you can get. House cleaning and maintenance. I've decided that my house cleaning is not good. I need it to be clean enough that if somebody pops over, it's not a total disaster, but it's not really clean. So you have a comfort level of what that looks like, right? My grandma cleaned every day. Everything was spotless. She swept the sidewalk. So this was her hobby. It is not my hobby. I'm not doing that. Other people may love having a clean house. What's your comfort level? What does that look like? Communication and medication, big one. Being able to communicate, especially to your doctors, understanding your medication. Again, your doctors don't talk to each other. Make sure your medication is good for you and it's not it doesn't work against some other medications that you're taking. Pharmacists are really good at helping you manage that. So make sure you're aware of what your medications are. Make sure you're aware of the side effects. so that if you have some side effects, of course, you get the list of side effects, it's way worse than the actual illness that you're working on. But be aware of those and find your joy. What makes you happy? Yeah, focus on the things you can do and less on what you can't do. And if you find something that makes you happy, how do you make it happen? Some people like to crochet, but they have arthritis. What do? Well, you get those big things, the big needles that are this big, and you crochet with these big ones. They almost look like rope, but you make it happen. Or you do 1 block a day, and you make it happen. Find ways to do what you love and continue to do that. That's what I do. I come here, I help people physically to do what they want to do, continue to do what they want to do, and I always try to find ways of doing that. I found a way to go skiing. Never thought I would. Haven't figured out how to go water skiing yet, but that's on the to-do list. But there's things that you have to figure out, and I have to tell you, in the process of figuring these things out, I've gotten myself in more trouble than not. Some of the big ones are climbing up to change a light bulb. I can get up. I can't get down. I've been stuck at the ladder. And I'll call my husband and he'll come in and say, "What'd you do?" I'm like, "I just need help to come back down." And he's like, "How long you been there?" I'm like, "I don't know." No, just help me get down. So there are things that you have to do and figure out how to do it. I was trying to change an outside light bulb. My daughter and my nephew were 12 at the time. I was up on a little stool, could not turn it. The water had gotten into the screws, and they were kind of rusted and shut. I was up there, had to be 40 minutes, twisting, a drill gun, which I can't hold up, so screwdriver. My nephew comes out, 12 years old, 2 seconds did it. I thought I was gonna cry for days. 2 seconds, he got up there, unscrewed it. He's like, "Is that what you needed?" Yes, that's what I needed. Be aware of what you can do and what you can't do. So now I call my nephew. "I need the outside lights changed. You have to come over and do it." Figure out ways to get things done, but find the things that you really love to do and figure out how to do them. Yeah? Yep. Oh, we're done. If there's a will, there's a way, right? No matter what you want to do, if you really want to do it, you'll find a way to do it. So here's the list. Again, we have the take-home notes. If anybody's been going through them a little bit, we'll just go through it pretty quickly. So the first one is just a checklist of basically when you go to the doctors. What I should have added is I have an actual, what I call a go bag. In my house, I have a bag that's already packed to go to the hospital. And in there, I have 2 pillows with bright, horrific purple pillowcases. Because when you go to the hospital, a white pillowcase looks like their white pillowcase, and they'll take your pillow. So I have bright colored pillows that go with me when I go to the hospital. I have extension cords. I have power chargers for my iPod and my phone. I have toothbrush, toothpaste, gum. I have all these things in a bag already. In that bag, I also have lists of medications that are on there, and I update that as my medications change. Sometimes if it's been maybe a quick turnover and I wind up in the hospital, if I'm sick a lot and I wind up going in the hospital, I'll just throw all my medications in a baggie and bring them with me so that they can check it. Now, I had some guy, doctor, go through all my medications and say, "Why do you have all these doctors?" He thought I was pill hopping from doctor to doctor. I'm like, "Dude, do you see these people? You know them? They're in your ER. They're here." And he's like, I said, "And you'll be added to this. When I leave, you're going to give me a medication that's going to have your name on it." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, I see this is from Beth Israel. I'm like, "I was in the hospital. The hospitalists write the medication for you, for their doctor, as you discharge. It changes." So I had some pills with them on it, but it was only like 1 renew before you have to go back to your regular doctor. But he really thought I was pill hopping. I'm like, "Really? Look at me. Yeah, I should be hopping for pills, but I'm not." But be aware. Some of those things in here. Some of the things that are not always so easy to deal with are family histories. You may not know your family history, especially if you're going to a new doctor. Again, my chart is like this thick. When I go to a new doctor, he's not looking through to see the beginning. He's looking at the last 6 months, year, to see what's been going on. He doesn't really care. He's got a list, a form that he's filling out, and he's just checking stuff off. Help him check those things off. Try not to get annoyed. It's really hard when I have a chart this big and an intern comes in and says, tell me what happened. No, I'm not telling you what happened. We have 25 years of history. You can go look it up. I'm telling you what's going on now, and we'll deal with that. So really try to help them fill out their checklist, because they have a list, they're going through the questions, and they're just filling in answers. Try not to take it personally, and try not to get annoyed. The other thing is, I recommend a journal, a daily journal. In my journal, I weigh myself every day. I take my blood pressure and temperature every day. I also list any symptoms that I may have going on, because when I go to the doctor, that's what the information is. If you're on a maintenance type of program with your chronic illness, maybe you're not seeing everybody for 3 months, 6 months between visits. Well, something that happened 2.5 months ago, you're not going to remember. But if you have a medical journal in front of you, and you can go back and say, you know what, I had 15 days where my temperature was 99, maybe it wasn't good, I hurt my back. They need to know that information. You may forget it when you get to that doctor visit. So make sure you have it. I recommend that everybody have a journal like that. And it helps you to remember what's going on 6 months ago, 4 months ago. My husband has a hip problem, and it's been going on and off. Pain in the hip, like literally you watch him, you can't walk. Call the doctor, he's like, yeah, I'll get to it. Hip feels better, doesn't do it. 3 months later, hip's back. Call the doctor, he doesn't call the doctor. Now we're back at again, his hip is back. I'm like, if you don't call, I'm gonna call. Now we're, probably 7 months with this going on and off. And when he forgets about it, when the hips feel fine, he forgets about it and just ignores it. That's that denial, the ignoring, right? We are our best advocates. Make sure you note those things. Even if it's not pressing, the doctor may want to know what's going on. If he goes to see his doctor and he feels good that day, he's going to forget that 2 months ago his hip bothered him for 10 days. So make sure you keep something, and I really do recommend a journal. Family history. Cancers are a big one. Diabetes are a big one. Heart disease is a big one. The ones that they always ask you. But go beyond your parents and grandparents. I've learned that it's usually your siblings and your parents and grandparents. Further out, I've learned that, your cousins, your grandparents, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles type of thing. If it's in the family, it's going to find you, yeah? Try to make sure you know generally your history. Not always possible. Honestly, it's just not always possible. But try to make a good effort understanding what your family history is. 50 years ago, somebody who had diabetes was almost like a death sentence. It's not like that anymore. But my dad has type 2 diabetes. When they told him he had diabetes, he went into a spiral. He was so depressed, he was so upset, because 50 years ago, he knew somebody who had diabetes and they only lived for 10 years. It's not the same anymore. So be aware of what your histories are. Be aware of the new technology, the new medical improvements that we've had and advancements in treatments. Because what was cancer, pancreatic cancer, 30 years ago was almost a death sentence. There are treatments now for it. So try to know the history, but try to remember that things have advanced. It's not always easy, especially facing a devastating illness. But things have changed, and you have to get your experience out of that, what you physically experience in your family and your friends in your history, to understand what can still be done now, right? So try to get that off of your mindset. Lifestyle changes. Some of the big ones are sleep. Everybody have any problem sleeping? Everybody sleep very soundly. Sleep well. Horrible sleeper. Absolutely horrible. Having sleep is a big one. Sleeping through stops things from coming at you. If you have, again, we go back to the chronic illness. If you have one, you're probably going to have 2 or 3. You need to be physically strong to stop that next thing coming at you. So COVID was supposed to be an acute illness, right? You had a beginning, a middle, end. You were supposed to go over it. People have long COVID now, and you've gotten into pneumonia and COPD and throat issues. So there's a long haul now for COVID. Now that you've immunocompromised, your immunity has been assaulted with COVID, you're going to get something else. Something is always coming at us. How many seasonal allergies are there? Right? 4 seasons, 4 sets of allergies. Flu every single year. Colds. I get a cold, it always turns into bronchitis. Bronchitis always turns into pneumonia, and I'm in the hospital. That's the cycle. When you're weakened, things that hit you hard, and it opens you up for the next thing. So try to be as strong as you can. Even if you have one illness that's coming at you, try to stay strong, sleep, diet, exercise, so that you can fight off the next one that's coming at you. Even if you still can't get rid of what you're living with, at least it's not compounding by getting more things assaulting you. That's a big one. Let's see, diet and weight. Oh, the new ones. Being honest with your doctor. How many people keep things from their doctor? Nobody keeps things, yeah? All right, well, recreational marijuana. How many people tell their doctor they're smoking and getting high? Maybe not many, right? Maybe you're not taking it. But if you are in chronic pain, maybe you started taking marijuana, gummies, to help with pain. Maybe you're taking it to sleep. Maybe you're not telling your doctor that, right? So these are one of those things, be honest with them. They don't care. They just need to know if it's going to interact with anything that they're going to give you, right? So be honest with the doctors. No judgment. And if there's judgment, find another doctor, right? We're there to help. Your doctor should be your advocate. They should be helping you. If they're judging you, yelling at you, move on. Find another doctor. I had a woman, a friend of mine, who went to an OB doctor. First time she ever saw this woman. Now, my friend is probably 15, 20 pounds overweight. Her new doctor told her, all your problems are because you're fat, and if you don't lose 50 pounds, you're going to hurt yourself. She left in tears, crying, calling me. I'm like, what doctor says that to people and says it in such a way that she left crying? I'm like, you need to find another doctor. That's not helpful. Yes, there is the let's be hard, solid medicine, trying to teach you a lesson. Then there's just rude and condescending. If you have that doctor, you're not comfortable with them, if you're not going to tell them everything, you got to find another doctor. Your doctors should be there to help you, and they can't help you if you're keeping stuff from them. So this person, she's not going to go back to this doctor. Being condescending to your patients makes your patients walk away, makes your patients not show up for monthly or yearly visits because they don't want to get yelled at for their weight. My dad, oh my gosh, my dad probably weighs 190 on a good day. He's diabetic. Every year he has to go to his doctor, and he has his heart doctor and his diabetic doctor pretty much the same month. He eats, gets up to 210 most of the year. The month before his visits, he diets, and he's back down to 190. They say, you've done great. Your weight hasn't changed at all. I said, Dad, you go up, you stay up here, and then you crash. He's like, they don't know. That's what he's doing, right? How many people do that? I don't know. I bet a lot of people do that. So you need to trust your doctors that they are not going to yell at you. If you don't trust that they're going to yell at you, you need to find another doctor, yeah? All right, so does anybody have any questions? Any comments? Nothing. I don't know. I should say that's good or bad. I don't know. But listen, if you really, anybody have any questions, you can find me. I know it's hard in a forum like this, but if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. If we've touched on something that you said, I wish we talked a little bit more about that, let me know and we'll get into that. But we're here, the people here at the COA, are here really to help you find the best advocates for you. If it's not you, if you're not comfortable talking to the doctors, reach out and we'll find somebody who is. No problem. I'll show up for you. I'm good at that. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you all very much. We hope you all have a good couple weeks, and we'll see you later.